Welcome to another enlightening episode of the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast, where hosts Tim Keefe and Andreas Wieman tackle the counterproductive behaviors and misaligned strategies that plague today's workplaces. In this episode, Tim and Andreas dive into two recent HR strategy articles, one examining task masking, where employees appear busy without clear contribution targets, and another exploring European employee engagement trends, revealing concerning statistics about younger workers' likelihood to leave their jobs. Through their experienced lenses, the hosts connect these seemingly separate issues to the fundamental challenge of meaningful employee engagement. This episode is sponsored by Stop Doing Stupid Stuff CRM, a practical guide for successful CRM implementation, co-authored by Tim Keefe and David Trupek.
Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting entry of the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast. I thought eventually, Tim, we would have to quit doing this podcast because people would stop doing stupid stuff, but it's kind of the opposite trend. We have more material. So
I was thinking we would have to stop to do it because we're both going to end up really in jail and we won't have access to doing a podcast. But I like your position better. It seems to be an unending amount of stupid stuff to talk about. That's for sure.
That there is, my friend. So let's say, tee up what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. So today, there are a couple of articles that came out this last week, and they both in HR strategy, which is not a bad channel to follow if you're interested in people, organizational psychology as it applies to the type of work that we all do. So the first one is an article on task masking that was by Michaela Cohen. And it's kind of interesting in that it's not a new behavior, just a new name for an old behavior. And that you're getting people, because they don't have clear contribution targets for a day, right? Like, this is not about return to office or work at home. This is about work in general, regardless of location. It's what are people doing and how does what they're doing contribute to, and I like your term, we were just talking about this, how does your work contribute to the outcome that represents success? And I know, God, that sounds like it should be pretty straightforward. Like everybody should know what success is. Yeah, I'm not sure sometimes.
No, yeah.
So the task mask. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say on that comment, most people would be like, "Well, I have a sales quota if they're a seller. I have a sales quota, and that's what I got to hit my sales quota." It's a very kind of generic overlaid goal that doesn't have specificity that really gets it down to it's created by finance, and finance says, here's your sales goal you got to hit, and then you got to distribute that equally among your people. That's not what you're talking about.
Well, sales goals in many ways are they are real contributory objectives, right? Like how do you get there, right? Like I could walk up to you in the hallway and say, I just gave you a $10 million quota. Good luck with that. And you go, but what resources, what marketing, what messaging, what am I going to do? And they'd be like, not my problem. Hit $10 million and let me know how it's working out for you. I mean, that's not I've seen those types of sales quotas. You have too. But I also think there's so many other roles within the organization that are sometimes harder to kind of lay out and go. Like, for example, I ran, support teams for clients for a long time. Okay, number one, are you available to take contact from a customer? Okay, that's about availability and resources. Number two, how do you perform in that contact with your customer? If you're poorly trained, you don't have good tools, most of the time it's like, the best I can do, sir, is open a ticket on your behalf and somebody will get back to you. Not a great customer experience, but not an uncommon one. And then what are the representative targets? Is it I answered X number of calls a month? Okay, that's better than not answering them. It might be, what was my average time to answer? Okay, it could be super quick, but if we do very bad job because we don't have the right tools and support, and our end users, whether they're external or internal, aren't able to do their work, then I'm failing. And I think that again was an interesting thing. I ran a end user support team at a large American bank many years ago, 20 plus years ago. And one of the things that was fascinating to me was there were people on my team who really looked at like ticket duration as a good thing, because they were in this mindset that somehow as an internal support organization, our representative success was how much we build the rest of the organization in cross charges. So every minute that a ticket was open to a particular work group, there was in theory like an internal cross charge associated with it. And I would just bang my head on the desk, because these guys would come in and go, look at all these cross charges we're getting back from these other organizations, which they weren't real, by the way. It wasn't like somebody was walking in with wheelbarrows of money. In essence, because we were slow and inefficient, we were actually hurting the ability of our end users, or the people who actually did trading and managed bank branches, et cetera. We were impeding their ability to get their work done. So talk about a group that kind of created their own internal target because it was one that they felt was, they could manage, but it was an actual internal target that was completely at odds with the role of that team and the role that they play in the organization. Because if I went to them and said, what's your number one job? They would have said, to maximize cross charges from the other internal organizations. I'm going, no, your job is to make sure that the people who rely on us for IT services have the tools they need to do their job. We should be measuring ourselves on downtime of customer facing employees. Oh my God, you would have thought that I'd spit on the floor or something, the way everybody was like, aghast. Ah! Well, but I'm like, but what are we doing, guys? Because I remember the manager going, oh, I've got this workstation I'm having to replace for this trader up in Seattle at the Seattle office. And I'm going, what? And he says, yeah, it's taken us a couple of weeks to get the PC for him. And I said, what kind of PC? And he told me, and I said, you know what? Take mine, wipe it, and fly it up to the guy. That trader makes more in an hour of profit for the bank. And you're an internal resource, so you don't ever make any profit for the bank. So of the two of you, which ones do you think we should be really focused on getting back to work?
Yeah.
Well, and people just didn't understand it. He just didn't understand where I was coming from.
And that's how it's so important that in like reorientating this back to like task masking, for example, the article that we're talking about, is people, they don't know really what their contribution is, or there's not alignment of the what I would call siloed organizations, departments in these larger companies, because that's the way, and of course the utterance I call them, that they've always used of, well, this is the way we've always done it. And so what does that mean? Does that mean, well, I'm successful, I'm bonus? Like, again, your team's probably like, well, why would I do that? That's going to hurt me to get my bonus, which kind of you peel the layers back and say, well, yeah, there's other behaviors and incentives, monetary or non, that start shaping the behavior that you're exhibiting from the employees, and they start conforming to what is going to benefit them, or what they think is benefiting their group, without stepping back and looking at the whole organization. And I think that's exactly what's going on right now of, this new trend. I kind of like the name of it, task masking. It's pretty catchy, but that's one of those trends that are going back, is because people don't know what is the expectation they're going to be held to, and then what does their contribution mean? Are they going to work hard enough just to not get fired, or task mask so they don't get fired? Or are they going to actually give it a full-fledged focused effort that is measurably better and quicker, by the way, higher quality in a quicker time frame, that has a bigger benefit when they feel like they're doing something that they can control and that has a concerted outcome or a collaborative outcome for the organization as a whole?
Agreed. And I think that's a critical point. And again, I'm not seeing that, right? We're seeing a lot of stuff that's about attendance, and then at the same time they'll say performance is down, or outputs are down, and you go, but how do you know? And this is where I think we're going to keep pounding this drum. I'm not going to stop, because I really feel that this is critical, and we're losing. And this will be the next article, but let me do a quick break, a sponsor break here. I'd like to offer up that today's Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast with your two rock star hosts is sponsored by Stop Doing Stupid Stuff, the CRM book. That's a book that I co-authored with my friend David Trupek, and this is on the trials and tribulations, and kind of a fun but very informative read of things that you can do to improve the likelihood of a successful implementation of a CRM application, or optimizing a CRM application. And actually, in many ways, this would apply to any technology implementation that you may do. But we have a couple more books in the pipeline, so if you get a chance, check it out. It'll be on Kindle. It'll be on available through our Transform CX website and our Stop Doing Stupid Stuff, or SDSS Global website. And thank you for the opportunity to share another book with you guys.
Yep.
So,
In,
so
in
with that,
short, in short, though, just to make sure it's
are you talking
clear,
about my height? You're
it's a
talking about my
book.
height again, aren't you?
It's a book that tells you how to stop doing stupid stuff. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty explanatory in the title. I don't know. Maybe people want to do stupid CRM implementation. Don't.
Come
If
on.
you want to do stupid CRM implementation, this is not the book for you, by the way. Okay.
Well, it might be the book for you if you want a good laugh. I think there are some pretty, those of us who've been through these things, I got a few good laughs as we were writing it. No, but with that, I think, the first article that we were talking about from Michaela Cohen at HR Strategy on task masking, I think is appropriate. Right? It's just, again, people are coming to the office, but what are they doing? And it's if it's filling up their calendars with meetings and going through what do I need to look busy, it's worth asking what's going on.
Yep.
I'm not saying things have to change, but you should be asking. Well, the second article, real quick, and I know we only have a few minutes, but I think it's kind of a very important. It was on European employee engagement. It was done by Great Place to Work, which is, as you know, a survey tool. So again, it's pulling in metrics, measurements, both qualitative and I think in the most cases it's all qualitative metrics. But what they were showing was, in Europe anyway, average engagement numbers were a little bit higher than what we'd seen in the past through Qualtrics, up in the low 40s, low to mid 40s. But it was very interesting also to see kind of the distribution of likely to leave by age group. And the over 55 likely to leave was pretty low, which kind of makes sense. People are at the, kind of, I would say, at the tail end of their careers. They're probably hoping this is their final job. They may be going into retirement. Europe, of course, the labor conditions, the labor laws are very different than they are in the US. So there's a lot more protection from a standpoint of pension, et cetera. But what was equally interesting was the percentage of people in younger ages that were most likely to want to leave. And that was when it got into the group between 18 and 24, over 40% of the surveyed people felt like they would be looking for a new job within the next year, likely to leave their current employer. Wow. Okay, so that kind of aligns with some of our own observations, that we've seen is the younger generation is looking for a very different work experience than maybe, people of my age or people, Gen Z and millennials, et cetera. Whereas, particularly millennials, but I think Gen Z and Gen Alpha and younger millennials are definitely in that, who do I work with? What do I do? And how does what I do contribute?
Yeah.
And they're not getting that from the work that they're getting at. The other interesting distribution to be fun to look at the next level of detail was where there's hybrid work or work at home more likely to happen from a geography perspective. So along the Mediterranean, it seemed like there was more return to office, warmer weather, I guess. I don't know if that drove it, but it seemed like the Northern European countries, Finland and Sweden, were much more likely to offer location flexibility. And it would be intriguing, as we look at this over time, is that a weather situation? Like just because weather is more challenging in the northern countries, and the idea that somebody would work at home throughout the entire winter seems pretty logical, versus maybe in the warmer climates, people are much more inclined to say, you should be able to get into the office any day of the year. But again, what I thought was interesting was, and this was done by Francis Cialaba, and I apologize if I mispronounced your family name, but again, I think a really cool little short article that we should be paying attention to, because these are all data points that can help us as we think about, or I think about anyway, this critical challenge of employee engagement. Because employee engagement is not just somebody smiling when they talk with my employee. It's the entire story of what are we doing and why, and it has so many implications. We were recently talking to one of the large maritime unions here, and there's an interesting correlation. Also, think about employee engagement in terms of work safety. Those of us who've worked in industrial environments or heavy machinery environments like oil refineries, ships, oil rigs, et cetera. These are environments where adherence to practice is not just because we used to do it this way. It's usually been built up over years because this is the way you do it and don't get killed or don't cause a huge accident. So when people are disengaged and they're not paying attention, it's my experience that particularly in these situations, that's where really bad things happen. And if you look at major industrial accidents like the one that just happened last year in Baltimore, where the ship knocked down the Key Bridge, that's not one thing. It's usually a series of events that point back to disengagement, sometimes by many people, that result in a horrific accident that could have been much, much, much worse, but still will cost billions of dollars to recover from. I'll just stop there because I could go on a rant about this, but I think these are two, they appear disconnected, but I think they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think the engagement factor is kind of foundational because if you're engaged, you know what's going on. You have a better pulse of what's going on, and then that helps you with your decision making process. And then the inclusion of having your employees help craft that and being able to communicate that back to them, then guess what? Their psychological safety net is improved, and then they're going to exert that, reciprocate that effort back into the business. And so you've got to find mechanisms that allow you to, and like, look, it's not easy. That's why nobody's really figured it out. And there's a huge variance that needs to be considered on each industry, each location. There's so many different variances that have to be, calculated when you're trying to figure out what is the plan of action to take, and then how do you continue to execute against that. Everybody can come up with this great theoretical strategy, and we're seeing this a ton over the past like 5 years. You can come up with a great theoretical strategy, but then when you got to get down and implement and execute on it tactically and surgically, that's where it completely falls apart. And now your starting point of when you try to hype your company up and say, "Oh yeah, this is going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread," you fail to deliver on it. You have huge employee turnover, and then guess what? You're at a deeper starting point than you were before you implemented this, rah-rah theoretical only strategy. So engage with your employees, use that as a starting point, and then start iterating on that on how you should formulate plans that make sense for them. If they're the ones who make the revenue for your company and have the biggest cost impact given the number of employees that are in that role, maybe you should include them in some fashion the decision making process so they feel included, they feel that they want to contribute, that they know what their contribution
Yep.
means, and I
Yep.
don't know, maybe good things will happen.
Well, and this is another one, like who are the change agents in your organization? You may not be able to involve everybody, but if you're going to involve the people that are respected by the work group and because they're always there, and you should probably learn who they are anyway, but getting them involved early can dramatically improve the likelihood of being able to affect a change or affect an improved program. At the very least, you'll get probably better feedback than you would get from if you just threw the message out to everybody. But if you can get to those key influencers, those change agents within your team, because they're the ones that if you go into a break room and ask, "Hey, everyone, where do you want to go for lunch?" Who do they all look at? That'll give you a pretty good indicator who the person is that probably has that respect. Hey, so with that, I know we've gone a little bit over today, but Andreas, thanks again, as always, for an entertaining conversation. Something we're both very passionate about. For the listeners, please like and subscribe if you can. Offer comments. We always want to understand what we can bring to the table that would be more interesting to you. We're going to continue to push employee engagement, not just at the aggregate level, but at the micro level. And how do we actually work with individuals to create better success for them? And I like to think if we make our employees successful, the rest of that moves on down the line. Trying to think that you can be the CEO and be successful without your team, I don't think that's a recipe for success.
Yep, agreed.
Anything you want to close with, Mr. Andreas?
No, I think it was a good conversation. Hopefully, some good takeaways for our listeners.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.